The first thing I noticed about Thorne Manor was its silence. Not the peaceful kind that wraps around you like a blanket, but the suffocating kind that presses against your eardrums until they ache. Rain tapped against the windshield of my taxi, each droplet catching the fading afternoon light and stretching it into watery prisms. Beyond the iron gates, the manor loomed against a bruised sky, all Victorian angles and shadow-stained stone. "You sure this is the place, miss?" The driver's voice cracked the silence. His eyes in the rearview mirror held concern, or perhaps it was just the reflection of the storm clouds. "Yes," I said, though uncertainty crawled up my spine like a cold finger. "I'm expected." I paid the fare and stepped out, the damp air immediately clinging to my skin. My shoes sank slightly into the gravel as I wheeled my single suitcase toward the gate. It creaked open at my approach, though I hadn't touched it. The sound scraped against the stillness, making me flinch. The walk to the front door seemed to stretch endlessly. Gargoyles perched along the roofline, their stone eyes following my progress. The gardens on either side of the path had long ago surrendered to wilderness. Roses grew in tangled knots, their thorns gleaming wetly in the dying light. The scent of decay and wet earth filled my nostrils, oddly sweet and repulsive at once. My hand trembled as I raised it to the brass knocker, a lion's head with a ring clenched between its teeth. Before I could bring it down, the massive oak door swung inward. The woman who stood there was tall and severe, her white lab coat pristine against the gloom behind her. "Miss Vance," she said, her voice clipped and clinical. "You're 3 minutes late." "I'm sorry, Dr. Vane," I replied, remembering the name from the correspondence. "The weather is irrelevant to punctuality," she finished for me. Her eyes were the color of steel and just as warm. "Come in. The child is waiting." I stepped across the threshold and immediately felt the temperature drop several degrees. The entrance hall soared upward into darkness, the ceiling lost in shadow. A chandelier hung like a frozen waterfall of crystal, casting fractured light across marble floors. The air tasted stale, with an underlying metallic note I couldn't quite place. "Leave your things," Dr. Vane instructed. "The housekeeper will take them to your quarters." I hesitated, then released my suitcase. It sat forlorn on the black and white tiles, a humble intruder in this mausoleum of wealth. As I followed Dr. Vane's rigid back deeper into the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, not just by the portraits that lined the walls, their eyes following our progress, but by something else. Something that resided in the very walls of Thorne Manor. Dr. Vane's heels clicked against the marble in perfect rhythm, like a metronome counting down to something inevitable. We ascended a grand staircase, the banister cool and smooth beneath my palm. Each step we climbed seemed to take us further from the world I knew, into a realm where shadows had substance and silence had voice. "Mr. Thorne is away on business," Dr. Vane said without turning. "He travels frequently. Your duties concern only the child." "Lilly," I said, recalling the name from the brief description in the job posting. "How old is she?" Dr. Vane paused at the top of the stairs, her shoulders stiffening slightly. "Chronologically or developmentally?" The question caught me off guard. Both, I suppose." "She is 6, Dr. Vane replied after a moment, "though her condition makes traditional developmental milestones irrelevant." My stomach tightened. The advertisement had mentioned a special needs child requiring discreet care, but details had been sparse. "What exactly is her condition, Dr. Vane?" Instead of answering, She continued down a long corridor. The wallpaper was a deep crimson, faded in places to the color of dried blood. Sconces cast pools of amber light at regular intervals, barely pushing back the gloom. The carpet beneath our feet muffled our steps, a thick Persian weave that had once been vibrant, but now held only ghost memories of its pattern. We stopped before a door at the end of the hall. Unlike the others we'd passed, this one had a small viewing window set into it at eye level, a modern addition to the ancient wood. "Lilly requires a specialized diet," Dr. Vane said, her hand resting on the doorknob. "She takes her meals at precise intervals. You will find the schedule in your quarters, along with detailed instructions for her medication." "Is she ill?" I asked, peering through the small window. The room beyond appeared to be a nursery, though oddly sterile. White walls, minimal furniture, and monitoring equipment I'd expect in a hospital rather than a child's bedroom. "She is unique," Dr. Vane replied. Something in her tone made me look at her. For a moment, I thought I saw something like possessiveness flash across her features. "Mr. Thorne's bloodline carries certain anomalies." Before I could ask what she meant, Dr. Vane opened the door. The scent hit me immediately. Antiseptic overlaying something sweeter, coppery. The room was cold, much colder than the hallway, and I instinctively wrapped my arms around myself. A small figure sat in the center of a white bed, surrounded by pillows that seemed to swallow her. Pale blonde hair fell in limp strands around a face so delicate it might have been carved from alabaster. But it was her eyes that held me. Large, luminous, and a shade of amber so bright they seemed to glow in the dimness. "Lilly," Dr. Vane said, her voice suddenly gentle in a way that seemed calculated rather than genuine. "This is Miss Vance. She will be taking care of you while your father is away." The child didn't respond. Her gaze moved from Dr. Vane to me, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. There was something ancient in those eyes, something that didn't belong in a child's face. "Hello, Lilly," I said, moving slowly toward the bed. "I'm Tessa." Her small hands clutched at the blanket, knuckles white with the effort. Up close, I could see how thin she was, her collarbones sharp beneath her nightgown, her wrists fragile as bird bones. "She doesn't speak much," Dr. Vane said from behind me. "Part of her condition." I sat carefully on the edge of the bed. "That's all right. We'll find other ways to communicate, won't we, Lilly?" For a moment, something flickered in those amber eyes. Hope, perhaps, or recognition. Then her gaze shifted to something behind me, and fear washed over her features. I turned to see Dr. Vane approaching with a syringe filled with milky liquid. "It's time for her medicine," she explained, her tone once again clinical. "You'll need to learn how to administer it, twice daily, without fail." The next morning, I woke to darkness so complete I thought for a moment I'd gone blind. My room was in the east wing, far from Lily's nursery, in a part of the house that felt long abandoned. The air was dense with the scent of old books and furniture polish, undercut by a mustiness that spoke of spaces rarely disturbed. I fumbled for the lamp beside my bed, its weak glow barely penetrating the gloom. According to my watch, it was just past 5, still night by any reasonable standard, but the schedule Dr. Vane had left indicated Lily's first feeding was at 5:30 sharp. The word choice struck me as odd as I dressed quickly in the chill. Feeding, not breakfast. The clinical terminology extended throughout the detailed instructions. Subject requires 8 oz of formula at designated intervals. Subject, not child. Formula, though Lilly seemed well past the age for such nourishment. The manor was a labyrinth in the pre-dawn darkness. I traced my steps from the previous evening, my hand trailing along the wall for guidance. Shadows seemed to shift and breathe around me. Twice I paused, certain I'd heard footsteps behind me, only to find empty corridors stretching into blackness. When I reached the kitchen, I was surprised to find it modernized compared to the rest of the house, all stainless steel and clean lines. The refrigerator hummed in the silence, a comforting, ordinary sound in this extraordinary place. I opened it, looking for the formula Dr. Vane had mentioned. The interior was meticulously organized, labeled containers arranged with surgical precision. On the top shelf, a row of bottles filled with what looked like milk stood at attention. I took one, noting its unusual weight and the way the liquid moved within, thicker than milk should be. As I reached for a saucepan to warm it, a voice from the doorway nearly stopped my heart. "You won't want to heat that." I spun around, the bottle clutched to my chest. A man stood there, tall and imposing, dressed in an impeccable suit despite the early hour. His features were aristocratic, almost severe, but it was his stillness that unnerved me most. He didn't seem to breathe. "Mr. Thorne," I guessed, my voice embarrassingly breathless. "I thought you were away. I returned early." His eyes were the same unusual amber as Lily's, but darker, deeper, wells of light rather than flames. "You must be Miss Vance." "Yes," I said, setting the bottle down carefully. "I was just preparing Lily's breakfast." Something like amusement flickered across his face. "Is that what Evelyn is calling it now?" Before I could ask what he meant, he moved, too quickly, too smoothly, and was suddenly beside me. I hadn't seen him cross the room. He took the bottle from the counter, examining it with a frown. "This won't do," he said softly. "Not for my daughter." He reached past me, his arm brushing mine. The contact sent a shock of cold through my body, not the chill of someone who'd been outside, but something deeper, as though his very core lacked warmth. He pressed a hidden panel in the refrigerator's back wall, revealing a compartment I hadn't noticed. Inside were bags of dark red liquid, labeled with dates and incomprehensible codes. Blood. They were blood bags, like those in hospitals. My stomach lurched. "What is that for?" Julian Thorne's gaze held mine, unblinking. "For Lilly, of course." I took an involuntary step backward, my hip bumping against the counter. "I don't understand." "I believe you do, Miss Vance." His voice was gentle, almost hypnotic. "You've seen her. You've felt the cold in her room, noticed how she shrinks from the light. You've wondered about her condition." My mind raced, trying to make sense of what he was suggesting. "She's ill. She needs special care." "She needs blood," he corrected, selecting one of the bags. "Her nature demands it." "Her nature," I repeated numbly. "My bloodline, as Dr. Vane so clinically puts it." He emptied the contents into a bottle similar to the one I'd selected, his movements precise and practiced. "Lilly is my daughter in every way, including her hunger." I wanted to run, to flee this house of shadows and secrets, but my feet seemed rooted to the floor. "What are you saying?" Julian's smile revealed teeth too sharp to be entirely human. "I think the word you're searching for, Miss Vance, is vampire." The bottle of blood hung suspended between us, its contents no longer an abstract medical supply, but a horrifying reality. My pulse hammered in my ears, each beat a warning to run, to escape this madness. But beneath the fear, something else stirred: curiosity and a strange, unwelcome fascination. That's impossible, I whispered, though even as the words left my lips, pieces began falling into place. The cold rooms, Lily's pallor, her aversion to light, the strange amber eyes she shared with her father. "Is it?" Julian asked, his voice soft as velvet. "You've worked in childcare for years, Miss Vance. Have you ever seen a child like Lilly?" I hadn't. In all my years as a nanny, I'd never encountered a child who radiated such ancient sorrow, whose eyes held centuries of knowledge. "She's dying," I said suddenly, the realization hitting me with terrible clarity. "That's why she's so thin, so weak. She's starving." Julian's expression darkened, a storm gathering behind those amber eyes. "Yes, Dr. Vane's medicine suppresses her true nature. The formula you were about to give her contains compounds that inhibit her need for blood. It keeps her docile, weakened, controllable." "But why?" My voice cracked. "She's just a child." "A child of two worlds," Julian replied, his fingers tightening around the bottle. "Her mother was human. Lilly is the first successful hybrid born in centuries. To someone like Evelyn Vane, she's not a child at all. She's a subject, a breakthrough." The clinical language in the care instructions suddenly made sickening sense. Not a guardian, but a researcher. Not medicine, but experimental drugs. "And you allow this?" I demanded, anger pushing through my fear. Something ancient and terrible flashed across Julian's face. "I have been detained. My return was not expected for another week. It seems in my absence Dr. Vane has accelerated her research." "Research," I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. "On your daughter." "Our arrangement was for observation only," Julian said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Blood samples, cognitive tests, and not starvation, not experimentation." I thought of Lily's frightened eyes when Dr. Vane approached with the syringe. "She's afraid of her." "With good reason." Julian handed me the bottle of blood. "Take this to her. Now. I have matters to discuss with the good doctor." The weight of the bottle in my hands, the weight of the choice before me, was overwhelming. If I accepted what Julian Thorne was telling me, if I gave this to Lilly, "What happens if I do this?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "What happens to me once I become complicit?" Julian's smile was both beautiful and terrible. "Then you become part of our world, Miss Vance, for better or worse." I made my decision in the space between heartbeats. "Show me the way." We moved through the house like shadows, Julian leading with that unnatural grace. The bottle warmed slightly in my hands, the contents no longer seeming foreign but vital, life itself for the child wasting away upstairs. When we reached Lily's room, Julian paused, his head tilting as though listening to something I couldn't hear. "She's not alone." He pushed the door open without a sound. Inside, the room was darker than it had been the previous evening, the monitors casting a blue glow over the scene before us. Dr. Vane stood beside Lily's bed, her back to the door. The child lay motionless among the pillows, her small arm extended, tourniquet wrapped tightly around her upper arm. Dr. Vane held a large syringe, already half filled with dark blood. "The subject shows increasing resistance to compound B67, she was saying into a small recorder. "Increasing the dosage has resulted in accelerated deterioration. Recommend harvesting final samples before cellular degradation compromises viability." Lily's eyes, glazed with pain and weakness, found mine over Dr. Vane's shoulder. A single tear tracked down her pale cheek, glittering in the dim light like a diamond. The bottle in my hands suddenly felt like the most important thing in the world. Dr. Vane must have sensed our presence. She turned, the syringe still embedded in Lilly's arm. Her eyes widened at the sight of Julian, then narrowed when she saw what I was holding. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp as a scalpel. Before I could answer, Lilly let out a sound. Not quite a cry, more primal than that. A keening that seemed to vibrate through the very foundations of the house. The lights flickered, and in that moment of darkness, I saw her eyes flash from amber to blood red. Dr. Vane yanked the needle from Lilly's arm, causing the child to scream, a sound no human child could make, filled with centuries of hunger and rage. The scream shattered through the room like glass, forcing me to cover my ears as the lights continued to flicker. In that strobing darkness, I watched Lilly's small body convulse, her back arching off the bed at an impossible angle. The bottle of Julian's blood slipped from my fingers, rolling across the floor toward the bed. "Restrain her!" Dr. Vane barked, lunging for a metal case on the nearby table. "Mr. Thorne, get out! This is a medical emergency!" Julian didn't move. His eyes had fixed on the syringe in Dr. Vane's hand, on the dark blood, Lilly's blood, that filled it. I'd never seen his face so still, so utterly devoid of humanity. "What have you done to my daughter?" His voice was barely audible beneath Lilly's continuing screams, yet somehow it cut through everything. I dove for the fallen bottle, my fingers closing around the cool glass just as Dr. Vane withdrew a second syringe from her case. "She needs sedation," the doctor insisted, moving toward Lilly with practiced efficiency. "Her condition is unstable." "Stop." Julian's command froze her mid-step. "Tessa, give her the blood." Dr. Vane's head snapped toward me. "Don't you dare. That's an untested substance." I was already uncorking the bottle, the rich metallic scent filling the air between us. Lilly's screams had subsided to whimpers, her small chest heaving with exertion. Her eyes, still that unnatural crimson, tracked my movement as I approached the bed. "This will help, sweetheart," I whispered, sliding my arm beneath her shoulders to lift her. Her skin burned against mine, fever hot and dry as paper. "Just a little sip." "I am ordering you to stop," Dr. Vane lunged forward, but Julian was faster. His hand clamped around her wrist with such force that the syringe clattered to the floor, its contents spattering across the sterile tiles. I pressed the bottle to Lilly's cracked lips. For a moment she didn't respond, and terror seized my heart. Then her small throat worked, once, twice as she swallowed the dark liquid. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Lilly's body went rigid in my arms, her eyes flying wide open. A sound emerged from her throat. Not a scream this time, but a sigh of such profound relief it brought tears to my eyes. The red faded from her irises, returning to their natural amber, though they remained unnaturally bright. "That's enough," Julian said quietly, and I pulled the bottle away, corking it with trembling fingers. Dr. Vane had gone very still in Julian's grip. "You don't understand what you've done," she said, her voice clinical despite the fear I could see blooming behind her eyes. "That child isn't—" "Get out!" Julian released her so suddenly she stumbled back. "Pack your things and leave my house by morning." "Mr. Thorne, be reasonable." "The subject." "Her name," I said, my voice shaking with a rage I hadn't known I possessed, "is Lilly." Dr. Vane's gaze shifted between us, calculating. Whatever she saw in our faces must have convinced her to retreat, at least temporarily. She gathered her fallen syringe and the recorder, tucking them into her pocket with practiced movements. "This is a mistake," she said at the doorway. "You're endangering everyone in this house." Her eyes lingered on Lilly, who had curled against my chest, her breathing steadier now. "Including yourselves?" After she left, the silence in the room felt heavy, broken only by Lily's soft breathing. Julian approached the bed slowly, as if afraid of startling her. When he reached out to touch her forehead, his hand trembled slightly. "She's cooling down," he murmured, relief evident in his voice. His eyes met mine over Lily's head. "Thank you." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. The intimacy of the moment, the three of us huddled together in the dim light, felt fragile, precious. "What was she doing?" I finally managed to ask. "Those tests." Julian's expression darkened. "I don't know, but I intend to find out." He carefully took Lily from my arms, cradling her against his chest with a tenderness that made my heart ache. "She needs rest. Real rest. Not whatever drugged state Vane's been keeping her in." I followed him down the hallway to Lily's bedroom, her real bedroom, not the sterile medical suite we'd just left. The night had deepened outside, and moonlight spilled through the gauzy curtains, painting silver patterns across the floor. Julian laid Lily on her bed with infinite care, tucking the blankets around her small form. "Stay with her," he said, his voice low. "I need to make some calls." "You're not firing, Dr. Vane?" I asked, surprised. His smile was cold, showing just a hint of teeth. "Oh, I'm doing much more than that. But first, I need to understand exactly what she's been doing in my house." After he left, I pulled a chair close to Lily's bedside, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. The moonlight silvered her pale skin, making the blue veins beneath visible. I reached out to brush a strand of hair from her forehead, and her eyes fluttered open. "Miss Tessa." Her voice was small, hoarse from screaming. "I'm here, sweetheart." I took her tiny hand in mine. "How do you feel?" "Better." She blinked slowly, her amber eyes luminous in the darkness. "The medicine Father gave me helped." I hesitated, uncertain how to respond. "The medicine in the bottle?" She nodded, her eyelids already growing heavy again. "It makes the burning stop. Dr. Vane's medicine makes it worse." A chill crept up my spine. "Lily, what does Dr. Vane do during your treatments?" But she had already drifted back to sleep, her fingers going slack in mine. I sat back in the chair, my mind racing. The image of Dr. Vane harvesting Lily's blood, her cold, clinical tone as she spoke of the subject and cellular degradation, haunted me. Whatever was happening in this house went far beyond a child's mysterious illness. I must have dozed off in the chair because I woke with a start to find gray dawn light filtering through the curtains. Lily still slept peacefully, her color much improved from the night before. Carefully, I extracted my hand from hers and stood, stretching my stiff limbs. The house was quiet as I made my way downstairs, seeking coffee and perhaps Julian. Instead, I found Renee in the kitchen, immaculately dressed despite the early hour, sipping tea at the island counter. "Good morning," she said, her tone neutral. "I understand there was some excitement last night." I poured myself coffee from the carafe, buying time to consider my response. "You could call it that." "Julian has asked me to review Dr. Vane's contract," she continued, watching me over the rim of her cup. "Apparently, he's seeking grounds for immediate termination." "Good." The word came out sharper than I'd intended. She was hurting Lily. Renee's expression remained carefully composed. Was she? Or was she administering necessary medical treatment that might be uncomfortable? I set my cup down with enough force that coffee sloshed over the rim. She was extracting blood from a weakened child while calling her the subject. She had her on drugs that were making her worse, not better. I see. Renee folded her hands on the counter. And you're qualified to make that medical assessment? I'm qualified to recognize cruelty when I see it. I met her gaze steadily. Why are you defending her? A flicker of something, irritation, concern, crossed her face before her professional mask slipped back into place. I'm not defending anyone. I'm ensuring Julian doesn't expose himself to litigation by breaching a contract without cause. Without cause? I repeated incredulously. Did he tell you what we saw? He did. She sighed, a small crack in her perfect composure. But Dr. Vane has powerful connections, Tessa. The research she's conducting on a child, I interrupted, is funded by people who don't appreciate interference. She stood, smoothing her already immaculate skirt. Just be careful. All of you. She left me standing in the kitchen, her warning hanging in the air like a bad smell. I finished my coffee in uneasy silence, trying to make sense of what she'd said. Research, funding, powerful connections. What kind of doctor experiments on her patient? And why would Julian have allowed it in the first place? I was rinsing my cup when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Julian appeared in the doorway, looking exhausted but composed. Lily's still sleeping, I said. Her color's better. He nodded, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Good. That's good. He hesitated, then added, I've been reviewing the security footage from the past few weeks. My stomach tightened. And? Dr. Vane has been conducting tests I never authorized. His voice was controlled, but I could see the rage simmering beneath the surface. Late at night, when she thought no one was watching. What kind of tests? He shook his head. I'm not sure yet. The camera in the medical suite only shows part of the room, but she's been taking samples, blood, tissue, and removing them from the house. Tissue samples. Horror crawled up my throat. She's been cutting pieces from Lilly? Small biopsies, it seems. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the counter, and injecting her with compounds I never approved. I thought of Lily's words the night before. Dr. Vane's medicine makes it worse. She's experimenting on her, I whispered. Julian's eyes met mine, and the cold fury I saw there made me step back involuntarily. Yes, and I'm going to find out why. What can I do? I asked. He seemed surprised by the question. You've already done more than I had any right to ask, Tessa. Last night I care about Lilly, I interrupted. I want to help. Something softened in his expression. Then stay with her today. Don't let Dr. Vane near her. I've instructed security not to allow her into the East Wing, but I don't trust her to obey. Where will you be? Meeting with some associates who might shed light on what Vane is really doing here. He hesitated, then added, I may not return until evening. I nodded, trying to ignore the flutter of anxiety at the thought of being alone in the house with Dr. Vane. I'll keep Lilly safe. I know you will. His hand brushed mine briefly, the touch sending an unexpected warmth through me. Thank you. After he left, I made a tray with toast, fruit, and juice, then carried it upstairs to Lily's room. She was awake, sitting up against her pillows, looking more alert than I'd seen her in days. Miss Tessa. Her face brightened when I entered. I'm hungry. I laughed, setting the tray across her lap. "That's a good sign. Your father will be pleased." "Where's father?" She picked up a strawberry, examining it with childish curiosity before taking a bite. "He had some business to attend to." I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her eat with relief. "He'll be back this evening." She nodded, accepting this without question. As she ate, I studied her, looking for signs of whatever illness had kept her bedridden for so long. Her skin was still pale, but no longer had that translucent, papery quality. Her movements were stronger, more coordinated. "How are you feeling today?" I asked when she'd finished most of the food. "Better." She tilted her head, considering. "The burning is quiet now." "The burning?" "Inside." She pressed a small hand to her chest. "Dr. Vane says it's my blood fighting itself." I frowned. "What does that mean, sweetheart?" Lilly shrugged, her attention already shifting. "Can we go outside today? Just for a little while? I want to see the roses." The request seemed harmless enough. Fresh air might do her good, and Julian hadn't specifically forbidden it. "Maybe later, when it's not so bright. We don't want you getting sunburned." She nodded solemnly. "Father says the sun isn't good for me. It makes the burning worse." Another piece of the puzzle, though I wasn't sure where it fit. I cleared the breakfast tray and spent the morning reading to Lilly from her favorite books. She was a different child from the listless, drugged girl I'd been caring for these past weeks. Animated, curious, her amber eyes bright with intelligence. Around noon, a soft knock at the door interrupted our reading. I tensed, expecting Dr. Vane, but it was Mrs. Chen, the housekeeper, with a lunch tray. "Mr. Thorne called," she said quietly as Lilly examined the food. "He asked that you keep the curtains drawn today. All of them." I nodded, though the request struck me as odd. The day had turned overcast, with heavy clouds promising rain. There was little direct sunlight to worry about. After lunch, Lilly grew restless, clearly unused to being awake and alert for so long. "Please, Miss Tessa," she begged. "Just 5 minutes in the garden. I'll wear my hat and coat." I hesitated, torn between her pleading eyes and Julian's instructions. The garden was enclosed by high walls, private and secure. Surely a brief visit couldn't hurt, especially on such a cloudy day. "All right," I relented, "but we bundle you up and we come straight back if you feel tired." Her delighted smile was worth the small rebellion. I helped her dress in a warm coat, hat, and gloves, then wrapped a scarf around her neck for good measure. We took the service stairs to avoid the main hallway where we might encounter Dr. Vane. The air outside was cool and damp, heavy with the promise of rain. Lilly's face tilted up to the sky, her expression one of pure joy as she breathed deeply. I kept a protective arm around her shoulders as we walked slowly toward the rose garden, where late blooms still clung to thorny stems. "Father planted these for my mother," Lilly said, reaching out to touch a crimson petal. "He says they reminded him of her." "They're beautiful," I said, surprised by this glimpse into Julian's past. He rarely spoke of Lily's mother, and I'd never dared to ask. "She died when I was born," Lilly continued matter-of-factly. "Father says I have her eyes." I studied her amber gaze, so unusual and striking. "They're very beautiful eyes." She smiled, then suddenly frowned, looking up at the sky. "The clouds are moving." I followed her gaze. The heavy cloud cover was indeed shifting, patches of blue appearing between gray masses. As we watched, a shaft of sunlight broke through, illuminating the garden in a golden glow. It happened so quickly, I barely had time to react. One moment, Lilly was standing beside me. The next, she was crying out in pain, stumbling backward into the shadow of a stone wall. I rushed to her side, horrified to see wisps of smoke rising from her exposed cheek where the sunlight had touched it. "Lilly!" I pulled her fully into the shade, my heart pounding. "Oh my God, are you hurt?" she whimpered, pressing her small hand to her cheek. When she lowered it, I saw an angry red mark, like a burn, already blistering on her pale skin. "I'm sorry," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I forgot to be careful." "It's not your fault," I assured her, though my mind was reeling. No human child's skin smoked on contact with sunlight. No human child burned from a few seconds of exposure on a cloudy day. "Let's get you inside. We need to treat that burn." I swept her into my arms, hurrying back toward the house, keeping to the shadows of the garden wall. My thoughts raced wildly. What was wrong with Lilly? What kind of condition made sunlight toxic? And why had Julian never told me? As we reached the service door, it swung open to reveal Dr. Vane, her expression a mixture of anger and triumph. "Just as I suspected," she said coldly, endangering the subject with unauthorized exposure. "She's hurt," I said, trying to push past her. She needs proper medical attention, not your ignorant meddling." Dr. Vane blocked the doorway. "Bring her to the lab immediately." "No." I tightened my hold on Lilly, who had buried her face against my shoulder. "Julian said you're not to treat her anymore." Dr. Vane's smile was thin and dangerous. "Mr. Thorne isn't here, is he? And I'm still employed as this child's physician until midnight. Now, unless you want to explain to him how you allowed his daughter to sustain a third-degree photosensitivity burn, I suggest you follow me." I hesitated, trapped. Lily's cheek needed treatment, and I had no idea how to properly care for such an unusual burn. But every instinct screamed against following Dr. Vane back to that sterile room with its monitors and syringes. "I'll treat her burn only," I negotiated. "No tests, no samples, no injections." "Of course," Dr. Vane agreed too readily. "The child's welfare is my only concern." Liar, I thought, but I had no choice. I followed her through the house to the medical suite, whispering reassurances to Lilly as we went. The child had gone quiet in my arms, her body tense with fear. The lab looked different in daylight, less sinister, but more clinical. Dr. Vane directed me to place Lilly on the examination table, then gathered supplies from a cabinet: gauze, ointment, a small bottle of clear liquid. "This will sting," she warned, soaking a cotton pad with the liquid. "Hold her still." I gripped Lily's small hands as Dr. Vane pressed the pad to her burned cheek. The child flinched but didn't cry out, her amber eyes fixed on mine with mute appeal. The burn looked worse under the bright lights, a perfect rectangle where sunlight had touched her skin, already blistering and angry red. "Photosensitivity reactions this severe are extremely rare," Dr. Vane commented as she worked, her tone clinically detached. "Fascinating, really." "What's wrong with her?" I asked, unable to contain the question any longer. "What kind of condition causes this?" Dr. Vane's eyes flicked to mine, assessing. "Mr. Thorne hasn't told you?" "Told me what?" She applied ointment to the burn, her movements precise. "This child has a unique genetic profile. One might even call it unprecedented." "Meaning what, exactly?" "Meaning," she said, securing a bandage over the burn, "that Lilly isn't entirely human." The words hung in the air between us, absurd yet somehow not surprising. I thought of Lily's amber eyes, her unnatural pallor, the way her screams had made the lights flicker. the way Julian's blood had healed her when modern medicine had failed. "What is she, then?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Vane's smile was cold. "Ask her father, though I doubt he'll tell you the truth." She stepped back, stripping off her gloves. "The burn will heal quickly. Her regenerative capabilities are quite remarkable." Lilly tugged at my sleeve. "Can we go now, Miss Tessa? Please?" "Yes, sweetheart." I helped her sit up, keeping myself between her and Dr. Vane. "We're going back to your room." "Before you go," Dr. Vane said, reaching for something on a nearby counter, "I need to check her vitals. Standard procedure after a photosensitivity event." She turned, a syringe in hand, and my suspicion flared. "You said no tests. This isn't a test. It's a preventative measure." She approached Lilly, who shrank against me. The burn could trigger a cascade reaction in her system. "No." I stood, lifting Lilly into my arms. "No more needles. If there's a problem, we'll call you." Dr. Vane's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake. That child needs careful monitoring." "What she needs," I said, moving toward the door, "is to be treated like a child, not a lab specimen." I carried Lilly back to her bedroom, my mind churning with questions I didn't dare ask her. Not entirely human. What did that even mean? And why did Julian trust me with his daughter's care without telling me the truth about her condition? Once Lilly was settled in bed, I drew the curtains tightly closed, now understanding Julian's insistence on keeping out the sun. She seemed exhausted by our brief excursion and the trauma of the burn, her eyelids drooping despite her efforts to stay awake. "Rest now," I told her, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. "I'll be right here." "Promise?" Her small voice was thick with approaching sleep. "Promise." As she drifted off, I paced the room, trying to make sense of everything I'd learned. The sun burned her skin. Julian's blood healed her when she was sick. Dr. Vane was harvesting samples, conducting unauthorized experiments, not entirely human. I needed to warn Julian. Whatever Dr. Vane was doing, whatever she knew about Lilly, it went beyond medical malpractice. She was treating a child like a research subject, and I suspected her powerful connections had nothing to do with legitimate medicine. I checked that Lilly was deeply asleep, then slipped into the adjoining bathroom where I could use my phone without disturbing her. Julian had given me his private number for emergencies, though I'd never had cause to use it before. I dialed with shaking fingers. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I hesitated, then spoke quickly after the beep. "Julian, it's Tessa. Something happened today. Lilly was burned by sunlight. Her skin actually smoked. Dr. Vane treated it, but she said Lilly isn't entirely human." I took a deep breath, then added the words that felt most urgent. "Go home right now, Vampire King. They're using the girl as a guinea pig." The nickname, Vampire King, had slipped out without thought, a private joke from one of our few personal conversations when he'd mentioned his aversion to garlic, and I'd teased him about it. But as soon as I said it, a chill ran through me. Vampire. Sunlight burns. Blood that heals. I ended the call, my heart pounding. Surely I was letting my imagination run wild. Vampires weren't real, but then what was Lilly? What was Julian? When I returned to the bedroom, I found Dr. Vane standing over Lily's bed, a syringe in her hand, the needle already piercing the child's arm. "What are you doing?" I cried, lunging forward. Dr. Vane didn't look up, smoothly depressing the plunger. "My job, Ms. Vance. Collecting necessary samples. Get away from her." I grabbed her arm, but the damage was done. The syringe was full of Lilly's dark blood. "Don't interfere with medical procedures you don't understand," she said, coldly, extracting the needle and pressing a cotton ball to the puncture site. "This sample could save lives. Get out." I positioned myself between her and Lilly, who remained asleep, drugged or exhausted, or both. "Now." Dr. Vane capped the syringe carefully, tucking it into her lab coat pocket. "You've made a serious mistake, Ms. Vance, calling Mr. Thorne with that ridiculous warning." She smiled thinly. "Yes, I monitor all communications from this house. Did you really think I wouldn't?" Fear crawled up my spine. What have you done to Lilly? Nothing she wasn't designed for. Dr. Vane moved toward the door, her posture relaxed, confident. "Her father created her to be studied. I'm simply fulfilling that purpose." "You're lying," I said, though uncertainty gnawed at me. "Julian would never. Julian Thorne has kept you in the dark from the beginning." She paused at the doorway. "Ask yourself why. Ask yourself what kind of man employs a nanny for a child who isn't human." After she left, I checked Lilly's arm, finding a small puncture mark in the crook of her elbow. She didn't stir at my touch, her breathing deep and even, too even. I suspected Dr. Vane had sedated her while taking the blood sample. Anger and helplessness washed over me in equal measure. I had failed to protect Lilly, failed to keep Dr. Vane away as Julian had asked. And now I was alone in the house with a woman who had just admitted to monitoring my communications and experimenting on a child. I needed to get Lilly out of here. Away from Dr. Vane, away from this house with its secrets and lies. But where could I take a child who burned in sunlight, who might not even be human? The decision was taken from my hands by the sudden wail of security alarms throughout the house. Red emergency lights began to pulse in the hallway, visible through the crack beneath the door. I gathered Lilly into my arms, her small body limp with unnatural sleep, and tried to decide whether to stay put or run. Before I could move, the bedroom door burst open. Detective Silas stood there, flanked by 2 uniformed officers, his expression grim. "Tessa Vance?" he asked, though he clearly knew who I was. "We have a warrant to search these premises and take the child into protective custody." "What?" I clutched Lilly tighter. "No, you can't." "Child endangerment," he interrupted, stepping into the room. "Medical neglect, suspected abuse." He gestured to one of the officers. "Take the girl." "No." I backed away, my heart hammering. "She's sick. She needs special care. You can't just take her." "We have medical personnel standing by," Silas said, his tone softening slightly. "Dr. Vane has briefed them on the child's condition." Dr. Vane? Of course. This was her doing. Her revenge for being fired, for being caught experimenting on Lilly. She had called the authorities, painted Julian as an abuser, herself as the concerned physician. "Please," I begged as the officer approached, hands outstretched for Lilly. "At least wait until her father returns. There's been a misunderstanding." A tremendous crash from downstairs interrupted me, the sound of wood splintering and glass shattering. The entire house seemed to shudder, the chandelier in Lilly's room swinging wildly. Detective Silas's hand moved to his weapon, his eyes darting to the door. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. Another crash, followed by a scream, not Lilly's unearthly wail, but a human sound of terror. The officers exchanged nervous glances. "Sir," one began, "maybe we should—" The bedroom door blew inward off its hinges, crashing against the far wall with such force that it cracked in 2. In the doorway stood Julian, his normally immaculate appearance in disarray, his eyes burning with a rage that seemed to fill the room with crackling energy. "Get away from my daughter," he said, his voice eerily calm despite the fury emanating from him in almost visible waves. Detective Silas drew his weapon. "Mr. Thorne, we have a warrant?" Julian moved, too fast, impossibly fast. And suddenly Silas was against the wall, Julian's hand around his throat, the detective's gun clattering to the floor. The other officers reached for their weapons, but froze at a sharp gesture from Julian. "I said," Julian repeated, his voice dropping to a register that made the hairs on my arms stand up. "Get away from my daughter." The front doors downstairs blew open with a sound like thunder, and the storm that had been brewing all day finally broke. I felt the world slow down as Julian held Detective Silas against the wall, the man's face turning purple. The other officers stood frozen, their hands hovering over their weapons but not daring to draw them. Outside, lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the room in stark white flashes that made Julian's silhouette seem to flicker between human and something else entirely. "Julian," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the storm. "Lilly needs you calm." His eyes, wild with rage, found mine across the room. For a moment, I thought he might not recognize me at all, that whatever ancient thing lived inside him had taken complete control. Then his gaze shifted to Lilly, who had stopped crying and was staring at her father with wide, unblinking eyes. Julian released Silas, who collapsed to the floor gasping. "Take your men and leave," Julian said, his voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. "Or I will remove you myself." Silas, rubbing his throat, looked up with hatred. "You can't just—" "I already have." Julian's hand shot out, gripping the detective's badge and ripping it from his shirt. "This means nothing in my house. You have 30 seconds. The storm intensified, rain lashing against the windows like tiny bullets. The officers helped Silas to his feet, and with one final hateful glare, they backed out of the room. "They'll be back," said, moving to Lilly's side, "with more men. They won't make it past the gate." Julian knelt beside the bed, his hand gently stroking Lilly's hair. The rage hadn't left him, but he'd contained it, compressed it into something cold and focused. "Tessa, we need to leave. Now." I nodded, already gathering Lilly's essentials. "Where will we go?" "Somewhere they can't follow." He lifted Lilly into his arms, her small body curling against his chest. "There's a place." He stopped, his head tilting slightly, as though listening to something I couldn't hear. His expression hardened. "They're already here." A new sound reached us then, the steady thrum of helicopter rotors cutting through the storm. I rushed to the window and saw searchlights sweeping across the grounds. Not police lights. These were military grade, mounted on black, unmarked helicopters. "Julian, who are they?" "Dr. Vane's other employers." He moved to the window, Lilly still in his arms. "The ones who funded her research. The ones who want my daughter." My stomach dropped. The government? Something worse. He turned to me, his eyes reflecting the lightning. "Tessa, I need you to trust me completely. What happens next will seem impossible, but I need you with me. With us." I looked at Lilly, her face buried against her father's shoulder, then back to Julian. "I'm already here." He nodded once, then handed Lilly to me. "Hold her tight. Don't let go, no matter what you see or feel." I wrapped my arms around Lilly, feeling her heartbeat against mine. Too fast, too strong for a child's heart. Julian moved to the center of the room and closed his eyes. The air around him began to shimmer, like heat rising from summer pavement. Julian, what are you? The words died in my throat as Julian's form seemed to stretch and darken. His skin took on a bluish pallor, and when he opened his eyes again, they were completely black. Not just the iris, but the entire eye, like pools of ink. "Stay close to me," he said, his voice overlaid with something ancient and terrible. The bedroom door burst open again. Dr. Vane stood there, flanked by men in tactical gear. Her face registered shock at the sight of Julian transformed, but it quickly hardened into determination. "Secure the subject," she ordered, and the men raised weapons I'd never seen before. Not guns, but something that hummed with electrical energy. Julian moved faster than my eyes could track. One moment he stood before me. The next, two of the armed men were on the floor, their necks at impossible angles. Dr. Vane backed away, fumbling with something in her pocket. "Run!" I screamed, but she wasn't running from Julian. She was pulling out a syringe filled with amber liquid. "If I can't have her, no one will," she hissed, lunging toward us. I turned, shielding Lilly with my body. I felt the needle pierce my shoulder, burning like fire as whatever was in that syringe entered my bloodstream. I screamed, my knees buckling, but I refused to drop Lilly. Julian roared, a sound no human throat could make, and Dr. Vane was suddenly airborne, crashing into the hallway wall with enough force to crack the plaster. The remaining armed men opened fire with their strange weapons. Bolts of blue energy crackled through the air. "Close your eyes," Julian commanded, and I buried my face against Lilly's hair just as a wave of pressure exploded outward from him. The sound was deafening, glass shattering, wood splintering, men screaming. When I dared to look again, the entire wall facing the hallway was gone, and bodies lay scattered amid the debris. Julian stood amid the destruction, his form seeming to flicker between human and something much larger, much darker. "We need to move," he said, his voice strained. "The injection. What did she give you?" My vision was starting to blur around the edges. "I don't know. It burns." He was beside me instantly, examining the puncture in my shoulder. His expression grew grave. "It was meant for Lilly, a failsafe, if they couldn't have her." "Am I going to die?" I asked, surprised at how calm I felt asking the question. "Not if I can help it." He scooped us both up, me still clutching Lilly, as if we weighed nothing. "But we need to get to the basement, now." Julian carried us through the ruined hallway, past more bodies and destruction. The entire east wing of the mansion seemed to be collapsing, support beams groaning as the structure failed. Outside, searchlights still swept the grounds, and I could hear shouting. "They're coming," I mumbled, the burning in my veins spreading to my chest. "Let them come," Julian replied, his voice a growl that vibrated through his chest and into mine. We descended the grand staircase, now partially collapsed. The foyer below was filled with armed men who turned as one when they spotted us. Julian didn't slow. He leapt from the landing, impossibly far, landing among them with a force that cracked the marble floor. Still holding us, he moved through them like a shadow through smoke, leaving broken bodies in his wake. I felt consciousness slipping away, the pain in my body becoming distant. "Julian," I whispered, "I can't hold on much longer." "Just a little further," he urged, kicking open a hidden door beneath the staircase that I'd never noticed before. We descended into darkness, the sounds of pursuit growing fainter. The basement was vast, far larger than I would have expected, with stone walls that looked ancient. At its center stood something that made my fading vision sharpen with shock. A stone altar, covered in symbols I didn't recognize. Julian laid me on the cold stone, carefully taking Lilly from my weakening arms. "Stay with me, Tessa," he commanded, his black eyes boring into mine. "Fight it." "What is this place?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "The heart of my power. The reason they want Lilly." He placed his daughter beside me on the altar. "She's not just my child, Tessa. She's my heir, the next vampire king." The term should have shocked me, but somehow it made perfect sense. The final piece of a puzzle I'd been assembling since I first stepped into this house. "Vampire," I repeated, the word feeling right on my tongue. Julian nodded, then bit into his own wrist. Dark blood, almost black, welled from the wound. "This will hurt," he warned, "but it's the only way to counteract what she gave you." He held his bleeding wrist to my lips. I hesitated only a moment before drinking. The taste was like nothing I'd ever experienced. Copper and wine and something ancient that seemed to sing in my veins. The burning sensation intensified, becoming agony that made me arch off the stone, a scream tearing from my throat. Above us, the house shook with explosions. Dust and small pieces of stone rained down from the ceiling. "They're destroying everything," Julian said, his face grim as he wiped blood from my lips. "Looking for this place." Lilly stirred beside me, her small hand finding mine. "Tessa hurts," she said, her first clear words I'd ever heard her speak. "Yes, little one," Julian replied, stroking her hair. "But she'll be strong soon, like us." The pain was changing, transforming into something else, a rush of sensation that made every nerve ending feel alive. My hearing sharpened. I could make out individual voices above us, count heartbeats, hear the scurrying of rats in the walls. My vision cleared, colors becoming more vibrant, the darkness of the basement no longer an impediment. "What's happening to me?" I gasped. "You're becoming," Julian said simply. "The poison would have killed you. My blood is changing you instead." Another explosion, closer this time. Part of the ceiling collapsed at the far end of the basement. "They're getting closer," I said, sitting up. The movement should have been difficult, but my body responded with new strength. Julian nodded, his expression grave. "There's no more time." He turned to Lilly. "Remember what I taught you, little one? About the door?" Lilly nodded solemnly, then closed her eyes. She began to hum, that same eerie melody I'd heard her sing so many times before. But now, instead of unsettling me, it resonated within me, as if my changed blood recognized the notes. The air in the center of the basement began to shimmer, just as it had around Julian when he transformed. The shimmer expanded, widened, until it tore open like fabric, revealing not the stone wall behind it, but a swirling darkness punctuated by distant lights. "A door," I whispered in awe. "Between worlds," Julian confirmed. "My world, where we'll be safe." The basement door burst open, and Dr. Vane staggered in, her face bloody but her eyes burning with hatred. Behind her came more armed men, their weapons trained on us. "Stop them!" she screamed. "The child is opening a portal." Julian moved to intercept them, his form once again stretching, darkening, becoming something that made the armed men falter despite their weapons. But Dr. Vane pushed past him, a new syringe in her hand, lunging toward Lilly, who was still focused on maintaining the portal. I didn't think. I moved, faster than I ever could have before, intercepting her. My hand closed around her wrist with enough force to shatter bone. She screamed, the syringe falling from useless fingers. "You!" she spat, her face contorted with pain and rage. "You're nothing. A nanny! A nobody! I lifted her by the throat, surprised at how easy it was. I'm her protector, I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, and you will never touch her again. I threw her, not with the intention of killing, but with my new strength. I sent her flying across the basement where she hit the wall with a sickening crack and slid to the floor, unmoving. Behind me, Julian had dispatched the armed men. The basement was quiet now, save for the strange humming sound emanating from the portal Lilly had created. It's time, Julian said, returning to the altar. He lifted Lilly into his arms. Tessa, come with us. I hesitated, looking back at the basement stairs. My life, everything I was, is gone, he finished gently. They know what you've become. They'll hunt you too now. I looked down at my hands, seeing them as if, for the first time, the same, yet different, stronger. I felt the changes in my body, the new hunger beginning to stir. What am I becoming? I asked. Julian held out his free hand to me. Something magnificent, something free. Above us, the mansion was coming apart. The ceiling groaned, huge cracks spreading across its surface. We were out of time. I took Julian's hand, and together, the three of us stepped through the portal Lilly had created. The sensation was like diving into cold water, a shock, then a strange weightlessness. Colors swirled around us. Sounds that had no earthly equivalent filled my ears. And then we were through, standing on red soil beneath a sky that contained 2 moons. The air smelled of spices I couldn't name, and in the distance, I could see the spires of a city that seemed to be made of crystal and bone. Welcome home, Julian said, as the portal closed behind us with a sound like a sigh. Lilly squirmed in his arms until he set her down. She took my hand, smiling up at me with small, perfect fangs. Tessa stay? She asked. I knelt beside her, touching her cheek. Yes, Lilly, Tessa stays. Julian's hand came to rest on my shoulder. There will be much to learn. The transition isn't easy. I stood, facing him. In this world, he seemed even more regal, more himself somehow. I'm a quick study. He smiled, and for the first time since I'd known him, it reached his eyes. I never doubted it. We began walking toward the distant city, Lilly between us, holding both our hands. With each step, I felt the last of my human life falling away, replaced by something vaster and stranger. The hunger was growing, but so was a sense of possibility I'd never known before. Behind us, the spot where the portal had been shimmered once more, briefly, as if something on the other side was trying to follow. But it faded, the connection broken. I didn't look back again. Instead, I lifted my face to the alien sky, breathing in the scent of my new world, feeling the blood, Julian's blood, now mine, singing in my veins. Whatever I was becoming, whatever this new life would hold, I would face it with the same determination that had brought me here. Lilly began to hum her eerie melody again, but now I could hear the words beneath it, an ancient language that somehow I was beginning to understand. A song about blood and stars and endless night, a lullaby for the children of the vampire king. And as we walked toward our new beginning, I found myself humming along,